All right, good morning or afternoon if you're in one of the afternoon classes. All right, today here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you set up so that you guys are all ready for your teacher next week, your new teacher. So, again, I'm Mrs. Straka, so if you haven't had me, I hope that you maybe don't enjoy today. I don't know. Maybe you're like me and you like verbs, but at least you're going to review some stuff and hopefully it makes sense. And if you have questions, you can always email me. Okay, so you've got your sheet in front of you. What we're going to do today is we're going to start with regular verbs, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to talk our way through just to remind ourselves of what regular verbs are. Then we're going to move to irregular verbs, and then we're going to move to something new called stem changing verbs, okay? So here we go. We're going to start here on regular verbs. And I'm going to try and talk slow enough that you can write it down as I'm talking and as you're watching. But if you need to, you can always ask Mr. Alterman to pause the video, rewind it if you need something, okay? You can also pause for just a second. You can check in with your partners and make sure you got the same thing, okay? All right, here we go. So regular verbs, what we want to put here, all right, is that these are verbs that will follow a regular conjugation pattern. Okay? So these are verbs that will follow a regular conjugation pattern. All right? And here's what we mean by that. If we remember that with regular verbs, okay, we, number one, break the infinitive verb. That just means unconjugated. So infinitive is unconjugated. So we break the infinitive verb into two parts. Hopefully in your head you're thinking of what those two parts are. So think for just a second. If you have a verb and you break it into two parts, what are those two parts called? Okay, hopefully you came up with stem and ending. Okay, stem and ending. So we're going to break those apart. All right, so if we have a verb like hablar, okay, we need to break it apart. So we're going to identify the two parts. The easiest part to find is the ending. Because remember in Spanish, our endings are AR, ER, IR. That's it. So we're going to find that first. So here we have AR on our end. And then anything left over is the stem. Okay? So now we've got that kind of separated. We can see the stem. We can see the ending. All right, step two. And again, you can pause the video if you need to, right? Step two, we're going to drop the AR, ER, or IR ending. We're just going to drop it off there. So once you've identified it, then we just drop it off. Okay. So if we're going to stick with the verb hablar, all right, we're going to take this right off. Okay, so we're just left with HABL. And for those of you that didn't have me last semester, let's quickly review what the stem and the ending do. All right, the stem tells us the action. So in the verb hablar, hablo, H-A-B-L, that's the action. That's speak, talk. The AR on the end, so the ending, so it's either AR, ER, IR, that's going to equal to the English word to. So in English, we just put that in front. We say to speak, to talk. In Spanish, they flip it, and it says speak to, talk to, okay? We're going to drop off that to part because we don't want to say I to speak. We just want to say I speak, okay? So we're going to drop off the word to, which is the AR. And then the third step, once we've dropped off the ending, whether it's AR, ER, IR, okay, we're going to add the correct present tense ending. Oh, present tense. There we go. Ending. And we're going to keep going with this thought because we need to say what the ending is going to do for us. So we're going to add the correct present tense ending to show who or what is doing the action and when it's taking place. That ending that we're going to add is going to tell us those two things: who or what is doing the action and when it's taking place. Now, you guys are Spanish 1. You're barely into semester 2. So right now, you all only know the present tense. So when we say when it's taking place, the only endings you know how to add are when things are happening right now. You're eventually going to get other endings that are going to tell you when things happened in the past. But for right now, the when it's happening, it's always present tense, okay? But we change up those endings to show you who's doing the action, okay? So again, we're going to add the correct present tense ending to show who or what is doing the action. Okay. Now, we need to just remind ourselves of what those endings are. So down here at the bottom, I'm going to put, here, and I'll scroll it up a little bit. Okay. Excuse me. All right. The endings, and I'll just put little boxes. So for AR verbs, okay, yo ending is O, tú is as, él y a usted, a, nosotros, amos, vosotros, ais, accent on that A if you're going to use it, ellos, ellas, ustedes, han. Okay, so that's for AR verbs. So if I wanted to say I speak, okay, I want us to look right here. We need speak, hablo, right, H-A-B-L, that's speak. And then if I want I speak, I have to use the right ending. Okay, so I look here at the chart, and this is for AR verbs, right? The O ending is the one I use for I, so I just add it on. Hablo. If we speak, I take H-A-B-L, which means speak, and I add the right ending for we, which is amos. Hablamos. Okay? So we'll do the same thing with ER verbs. They just have a different set of endings. And so we have to memorize these endings. So the yo is still O, but tú is es, él, ella, usted, e, nosotros, hemos, vosotros, eis. And again, you don't have to use vosotros, especially students that are new. If your teacher didn't teach it to you, that's okay. Just in Spain, they use it for informal you all. So for ER verbs, we have O, es, e, hemos, eis, en. Okay, same thing. If I have an ER verb like comer, which means to eat, I'm going to take the to part off, the ER on the end, and I get com, C-O-M. And then I just have my endings. If I want to say she eats, ella come. If I want to say they eat, ellos comen. And then, of course, we're going to do the same thing with the IR verbs. They have a set of endings that look like ER endings, but they're just slightly different. So we get o, es. Let me see if I can make that a little bit better. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. E. So far it's looking the same as ER, right? But then we get to nosotros, and it's imos. That's a dot for the I. And then for vosotros, it's is with an accent on the I. But then we go back to looking like an ER verb, en. Okay, and that's your IR verb endings. Same thing. Vivir, to live. Take the IR off. If we want to say you live, tú vives. We just add that es on the end to say that it's you that's doing the action of living. Okay, take a second. If you need Mr. Alterman to repeat any of this, like review any of this, or if you want to pause the video just to check in with each other, make sure you've got the right answers, okay, the right notes, do that now. And then come back and we're going to look at irregular verbs. Okay. So irregular verbs. Let's go ahead and talk our way through this. This is pretty easy, okay? These verbs do not follow a regular conjugation pattern. And because they don't follow a regular conjugation pattern, okay, we're going to have to memorize them because there's no way to know what they're going to do. They're just kind of wild. They just kind of do whatever they want. So again, these verbs, irregular verbs, do not follow a regular conjugation pattern. Okay, so we will have to memorize them. Okay, so take a second, make sure you've got that note. These verbs do not follow a regular conjugation pattern, so we have to memorize them. Let's think about verbs that we know or that we use already that don't follow a regular conjugation pattern. Think about a verb that you know where you can't just take the stem, break it away from the ending, and then just add an ending. So think of verbs where it's really just that doesn't happen. It goes funky on you. All right. Hopefully, we came up with some examples in our mind. Okay. But we'll put some here just to remind ourselves. Okay. Oops, that's supposed to be a dot. There we go. Okay. So hopefully, maybe some of you thought of the verb ser, which means to be, right? Because when we conjugate ser, we can't just take the ER as the ending and S as our stem. It goes real funky. It goes from SER to yo soy, tú eres, ella usted es, etc., right? Somos, sois, ... Sorry, those are terrible dots. Hopefully, some of you thought of the verb estar, which also means to be. Right? We go from ESTAR. Now, this one isn't going to be as funky, but it is still funky. It's not following the rules. What I can do is I can break the AR away and I get EST. But if I want to conjugate it, I should get just this, right? Esto. But to say I am using esta, we add a Y on there. Why? I don't know. It's irregular. There's no rhyme or reason. So we memorize it. Estoy. Now this one looks normal, except we're adding on accents, right? Estás, está. So it's funky because we're having to add on those accents. Okay. Hopefully, also, some of you all thought about the verbs that you guys have done this week, right? So, for instance, like tener, okay, which means to have, right? And we go from tener to tengo, tienes, tiene, weird, right? Venir. Sorry, that's supposed to be a dot. Eek. Let me try that again. Okay. Venir. To come. Vengo. Vienes. Viene. Okay. Dot, dot, dot. And then the last one, hopefully you guys have thought about because we just did it, the verb ir, to go. It's especially irregular. Look at it. It's just 2 letters, IR. What do you do with it, right? And it goes super funky. Yo voy, tú vas, ella usted va, etc., etc. So those are some examples of irregular verbs that don't follow the pattern, that we've just learned as we've gone, and we've had to memorize them, okay? So what I want you to do is you're going to go ahead, you're going to pause this, all right? And you're going to just play a quick little game using these verbs. And then when you come back from that game, you're going to learn about stem changing verbs.